Good afternoon, everybody. This is Charles Raether again, Managing Partner at AmLaw Group. Today, I wanted to talk about your kids. Most of our clients have kids when they look to immigrate, and in particular, this is true for our EB-5 clients. Because let's face it, the vast majority of our families, whether it's EB-5 or any other visa category, vast majority is doing this largely for their children and for their future. And an important part of any child's future is their higher education. And you can say what you want about the American educational system, and believe me, there's a lot of problems with it, especially at the primary and secondary level. But at the university level, fortunately, we still have a very strong world-class educational system. And clients generally, for the EB-5 visa, look to try to time things correctly so that their children can study in a university or college in the U.S., take advantage of those opportunities, and also take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded to them if they are legal full-time residents by the time they start their schooling. So what should you keep in mind when you're planning for that transition for your children who maybe are teenagers, maybe in that 14, 15 years old bracket, looking to go to college in a couple of years? How do you best time that in the context of the EB-5? Now, if your children are quite young, I don't think this timing issue is much of a problem. You've got a lot of time, and you likely will move here before they're even close to college age. But many times we have families that have children in their mid-teens, maybe 15, 16, even as old as 17, and their concerns center around getting their children enrolled in college here or university, and also trying to take advantage of the financial benefits that are available to full-time residents. Now, you've likely heard about, and maybe from our other videos or materials, or maybe on your own, that in the US, if you're a full-time resident in the state where you reside and where you're looking to go to college, you qualify for tuition rates if that school is a public university. So, I would say in general, private universities tend to have, not all of them, believe me, not all private universities are better than public, but if you look at the top elite 5, 10 universities in the country, the majority of them are private. But there are quite a few very, very good public universities. It could be, University of Florida, University of Virginia, UCLA, University of California, LA, University of California, Berkeley, and that's just, University of Texas in Austin. Those are all very top tier public universities. And their tuitions are generally a little bit less than private universities for their out-of-state students. But if you're an in-state student, tuition is significantly less, usually to the amount of 2, 3, 4 times less if you're an in-state resident. So for example, if you're a California resident, your child wants to go to Berkeley, I believe the difference between in-state and out-of-state is probably 3 times. So, and it's similar too, that ratio is similar in most other states, 3 to 4 times. University of Florida, for example, I think it's a top 20 university. If you're a Florida resident, I think you pay $10,000 a year in tuition, plus or minus. If you're out of state, gosh, it's north of $30,000, if not $40,000. So there's obviously financial benefits of acquiring residency prior to them enrolling in college. So let's back this out to plan your EB-5 and see how this all works out. So the vast majority of states, if not all of the states as far as I know, you need to be a resident for 1 year prior to the commencement of that semester when your child is starting school. So let's say most colleges these days start in late August, but for these purposes, let's say September 1st, just to make our calculations easy. And let's say, this September 1st, your child is planning to enroll at school there and start their classes. You need to acquire residency at least 1 year prior to that. So that means if, let's say we go back to 1 year, September 1st, 2025. So you need to acquire residency by that date. When would you need to file for your EB-5 in order to have residency by that time? Now, this is an inaccurate science, and I only say that because trying to estimate in time, approvals and filings for EB-5 is black magic, I guess. I mean, there is no science to it. It is literally magic. It is, making reasoned estimates, but these estimates can always be wrong. So if you've watched other videos of ours and talked to us, you know that, the majority of our EB-5 clients are investing in rural projects lately because those have a pretty standard review time And the US government is pretty consistent with that. And that's about 12 months. So let's say, you have to become a resident of that state by September 1st, 2025. The review process is going to take a year. That means you've got to file by September 1st, 2024. Now, if you're filing, by September 24, and I understand I'm talking in past years, I probably should have set the clock going differently going forward, for example, but the concept, is the same. That if you need to acquire residency or you need to acquire residency to start school in September 1st, 2026. And if it's a 12-month period for reviewing, then that means, we've got to look at filing your case by September of 2024. And if we want to make sure there's, to cover any contingencies or possible delays, then you've got to go a little bit earlier than that. So for example, if we decide, okay, our child's going to start, school, maybe a year from now, or let's say even 2 years is planned to start college. It's very difficult to also take into account the processing times at the embassies. So we are constrained here by a lot of factors that we just have no control over. If you're in the United States right now, then you have much more control over that. Because if you're going to file for adjustment of status, you might be here with an approved I-140 and you've got tired of waiting for that, you're looking at the EB-5. That's a very typical scenario right now for our clients. If that's your scenario, then you're in a much better and a more predictable case than those who are outside the US. So if you're inside the US, you're here on an H-1B, and you're waiting for your I-140 to come current and you're tired of waiting. The main thing is just acquire residency in that state, whatever visa status you have, that really doesn't affect things. And it's much more predictable and controllable from that perspective. If you're going to the embassy, we generally tell clients, and it really depends on what country you're from and a number of other factors, that you probably got to add on another year in addition to the processing time with USCIS. So say, for example, you're investing in a rural project, that's going to take a year. And then let's say after that, we tell our clients, count on probably another year to get through the interview process at the embassy. Some countries it could be longer, some it could be less. So if we take that into account, you're looking at 2 years. So if your child is less than 2 years out from starting college or university in the US, it probably will be difficult to time everything so that your child would qualify for in-state tuition starting from that first year. Maybe that's an unpleasant financial consequence, but there's nothing to keep you from year 2, once you've acquired residency, from qualifying as an in-state resident at that point. So once you start as an out-of-state resident, that doesn't mean for the duration of your studies, you're stuck with that. So that's one possible solution. But like I said, if you're in the US, it's much easier to time these things because you're able to move depending on where your job is and other factors. But it's much easier to time those things better. Now, one other factor that's coming into play is the grandfathering that's going into effect on September 30th of 2026. So that's another reason why people are going to start filing their EB-5s faster and sooner, not only in order to give enough time for your child to start school and get all that process, but we're going to see a large influx of cases later this year in 2026 as more and more applicants want to get in under that grandfathering clause to protect them from any potential changes that might happen after September of this year. From my perspective, I have heard of no changes that are being looked at by the White House or Congress. But folks, these are politicians. We don't know what's going on in their head, and we suddenly could get some kind of announcement from the White House, after September 30th that, they're increasing the minimum investment amount, they're changing some review processes and requirements, et cetera. So if you are looking at EB-5 and you're trying to time things for your children, and you're looking to do this in the relatively near future, I would say, just get things started and filed as soon as possible, because whether it's us or any other immigration attorney dealing with EB-5, everybody's going to become more and more busy later this year as people try to get in under this deadline. Hopefully this was of some value to you and your family in making planning decisions. A lot really depends on your individual circumstance, and so we certainly welcome you to reach out to us in order to have one-on-one consultation to discuss your particular situation and goals and discuss how we can effectively help you make that transition as effective and pain-free as possible. If this was valuable for you, please put a like on this video. Consider signing up to our channel so that you can get updates on this and other topics going forward. And we always look forward to speaking to you in the future.